What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the newest edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Over the next 25 minutes, we will dive into the world of sports betting. And obviously, we're touching a lot on the NFL with our guest, Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network. You can follow him on social as well at Lloyd Vance. We are brought to you by Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check the show notes below. 20% for the Back Your Play promo, as well as Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey, open 7 days a week. All right, so always good to talk to you, my friend, as we dive into the AFC North, as we continue to kind of go 20 to 20, if you will, in the off season. Very interesting when you look at this division, when you look at the division itself, as far as the level of competition: Baltimore, Cincy, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. And then we start to break down some of the schedule. Let's start with Baltimore, 13-4. Their projected win total in 2024 is 11.5 plus 125. If you think they're going to go over, it's minus 145. They were scoring about 28. They were giving up about 16, but obviously we saw what happened once again in the playoffs for the Baltimore Ravens. So let's start with, I guess we can talk about those numbers right now as this squad is presently constructed, and we'll get to the schedule, the meat and potatoes of it. Can you foresee them duplicating that type of 13-4 record?
Heck, you, they'll probably be right around that number. But as you were saying in your lead there, this is probably the most competitive division in football.
Yeah.
All these teams have winning records last year, and they can all jump to the top. So it's going to be a tough run for Baltimore. As we all know, it's playoffs or bust for them. But in a regular season, you got to start there. And their roster is very strong, but there's a couple of areas, as usual, where you're like, okay, have they done enough, particularly at the wide receiver position? They have Zay Flowers there. He had a pretty good breakout season last year, but can he back that up? And there is some off the field issues with him. They did draft Devontae Walker later on in the draft. We'll see if he can step up. But that receiving core, when you're leaning on guys like Nelson Aguilar, you got to wonder, do they have enough? And now Todd Monken, his second season, their bigger grab this offseason, we all know, is Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to establish a power running game, go back to old school Ravens football. Obviously, Lamar Jackson going to get his runs as well, but they're going to try to get Henry going. Now he's 29, 30 years old. You have to start to wonder how much he has left in the tank. And then they're going to obviously lean on that defense, who you talked about, scored, they only allowed 16 points per game last year. So very good defensively, but offensively, some question marks.
I'll tell you what, first month or so of the season, my goodness, are you kidding me? On the road, Kansas City, home against the Raiders, on the road against Dallas, home against Buffalo, on the road against Cincinnati. Wow. I mean, if they get through that 4-1, they're legit. 3-2, you sign up for it. But anything less than that, I'd be hard pressed to lay anything thinking they're going to hit that 11.5 over. So first 5 weeks of the season, I mean, the schedule gods were not kind to the Baltimore Ravens. So, but the beauty is you get that out of your way, right? And then all of a sudden you've got some winnable games. I mean, even to close out the season, they'll still have Houston and Cleveland. They've got Pittsburgh, the Giants sandwiched in. I mean, my goodness, they got Philly. They got a really tough schedule for a team that won 13 games last year.
Yeah, they had their first place schedule and they had to bye last year. So
Yep.
they did not do them any favors. And as you said, uh, a lot of primetime games. I see Sunday night football games, Monday night football games, Thursday night. They're playing on Christmas. Excuse me. And you just wonder, can they get through this gauntlet, as you were saying? And it starts week one. They're in the opener against the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, and that's such a tough place to play. It's a revenge game for them, but can they get it done against Mahomes and them? That's a tough way to start. And then in week three, they're at Dallas. They have Buffalo on Sunday Night Football week four, at Cincinnati, who we're going to get to, but I think they're one of my rebound type teams this season. Uh, Week seven is going to be interesting. They're at Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football, and then you talked about that stretch. Week 11 at Pittsburgh. Week 12 at the
Yep.
Chargers on Monday Night Football. Eagles, and then they finally get to bye in week 14. So this is a very tough schedule, top to bottom. That 11 and a half number, that may be too high. Maybe they come in 10, 11 wins, which would be kind of admirable, but it's going to be, a make or break season for these guys because everybody is looking at them as like, all right, how many years are they going to get to the
Sure.
playoffs? Last year, number one seed, yeah, they got the monkey off back. They won in the first round and divisional round, but in the championship game, the Chiefs took it to them in their own stadium.
Yeah, it's a great point. You mentioned the aforementioned Cincinnati Bengals. Their win total is 10.5, the over minus 125, under plus 110. I mean, I'm inclined to go under. They were 9-8, 21 points for, 22 against. We know the issues on defense. We know the inconsistent play, but it all comes down to the franchise quarterback and if he's fully healthy and engaged. I mean, listen, they were my pick to make the Super Bowl, as you know, last season to take on Detroit, Cincinnati coming out of the AFC. I still think they're an extremely talented team, but it always falls on the quarterback. And in this case, Burrow, we know they certainly have some weapons on both sides of the football, but kind of like Baltimore, if not, if not now, when? I mean, we saw them go to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, lost a tough game to the Rams at the time, but I think there's a lot of pressure on Cincinnati. Uh, I think they got a mixed bag to start the season. You get a layup against New England, but then you turn around on the road against Kansas City. And then you got Washington, Carolina, two very young teams as far as quarterback position goes. And then Baltimore. I mean, if they can figure out a way to beat Kansas City, they can easily be 4-0 before they take on Baltimore in week 5. And then you look at the back end of their schedule: Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, and Pittsburgh. So, listen, it's a tough division, man. Am I comfortable with that minus 125 over 10.5? I'm more inclined to go plus 110 under. I can see them winning 9, 10, 11. To me would be a stretch.
I may agree with you on this one. And it's not that I don't believe in their roster because it's constructed pretty well. Duke Tobin, their general manager, Mike Brown, their owner, they did a good job in terms of this team and building it on both sides of the football. They concentrated this offseason trying to fix that offensive line. And they have to do that, Q, because Joe Burrow is now 28 years old. And in looking at his career, lots of injuries. 2020 at the ACL. Last season, it was wrist surgery. He missed 7 games. And this team just cannot function on all cylinders when he's not playing. Yes, the backups did an okay job, but you talk about that gauntlet that they have there. It's a tough schedule. And they're another one. They got to face the Eagles as well
Yep.
in week 8, which is a tough game for them. They're at Baltimore on Thursday night football in week 10, and they finally get their bye in week 12. So another tough schedule. And as you were saying, getting to that over win total is going to be kind of tough because there are not a lot of easy games in their
No.
schedule. But I do like the way their roster is constructed. As I said earlier, they brought in 2 safeties. Von Bell is coming back to them. And they also bring Geno Stone over from the Baltimore Ravens. So trying to fix that defense that allowed 22.6 points per game. They actually were negative in terms of, they gave up 384, but they only scored 366. So this is a team, they're going to compete.
Yeah, week 5 to 10 is going to be a make or break. You mentioned leading up to that bye week. They'll wrap it up. They'll bookmark it with the Chargers. But if you look at it, Baltimore on the road against the Giants, and then Cleveland, then home to Philly, then home to Vegas. They catch a break there as opposed to having to go East Coast, West Coast, back to East Coast. Then they go on the road against Baltimore, and then they have to go back out on the road against the Chargers. Coming off the bye, they have Pittsburgh, and then on the road, Dallas. So some kinks in the schedule as well. Then you got Cleveland, an upstart team, great run with Flacco. They got absolutely ambushed by Houston in the playoffs. This was a squad that went 11-6, and it kind of tells you what the odds makers are thinking about. Cleveland really taking a big time step back as opposed to overachieving last year when they ran through the gamut of quarterbacks. Did they not? 8.5 is the over, minus 130. The under is 8.5 plus 110. 23 points for, 21 points against. Again, I'm not sold on, and you know this, I'm not sold on the quarterback at all, whether it's Winston, Huntley, or Deshaun Watson. I'm just not. You got Chubb coming back from a major injury. We know they've got some playmakers, but again, I just think because you have to go through Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, I think last year was fool's gold. If you're a Cleveland Browns team, they got exposed big time. Uh, you know, Joe Flacco reverted back to the Flacco that's going to throw picks in that playoff game. Um, and they just got ambushed by the Texans. Their defense was gassed. I think their defense is going to give up a lot of points again this year. I don't foresee them winning 8 games. I actually would be hard pressed to believe they win 7 games. That's how far of a step back I think the Cleveland Browns take.
Yeah, Q, they're an interesting team because I'm much like you. I think they may have caught lightning in bottle last year. 4 different starting quarterbacks. The first team to ever do that to make the playoffs, and they had some success with guys like PJ Walker and you talk about Flacco at the end of the season, but it's all on Deshaun Watson's shoulders. They gave him all that guaranteed money. He's never really lived up it. They're another team that's working on their offensive line, a good group up front cohesively, and they have Amari Cooper. But can Nick Chubb come back from that devastating knee injury? It was tough to watch, and you'll see if he's able to do that. They do have Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year, in this team, and their defense is very physical. But I tend to agree with you that I don't think they're going to hit that win total because even though they got the third place schedule for this
Yeah.
division,
Yeah.
they still have to play at Philadelphia in week 6.
Yep.
That Cincinnati game at 7 is going to be tough. Then you have Baltimore right after that in week 8. The Chargers, then they have their bye in week 10. They play Kansas City in week 15, Miami in week 17, and then they finish at Baltimore. So
That's
very
tough.
tough schedule. And with the regression of Watson has just been, he's starting to fall off a cliff, in my opinion. He's just not the same guy after that 2-year break, before he even got to Cleveland. But we'll see how they do. But I agree with you that I'd probably take the under with them.
They're going to have to ride it out until his arm throws, until he throws his arm out. I mean, every cent and every penny was guaranteed. You're stuck between a big time rock and a hard place. I mean, he's played 12 games over the last 2 seasons, as you mentioned, after he had that 2-year, if you want to call it hiatus, so be it. He's never going to revert back to the form he was 2018, 2019, 2020. I don't see it. I mean, he's not putting up 33 touchdowns to 7 picks. He's just not. And I think they have so much invested and tied up with Deshaun Watson. This is why I think it's going to implode in their face at some point during the season. So, and that leads us into their bitter rival, Pittsburgh. Again, overachieved, if you will. Like, listen, another quarterback shuffling, right, with Pittsburgh and Tomlin and bringing a veteran in Russell Wilson. Last year they were 10-7. We can agree they overachieved. Points for 17, points against 19. I mean, so basically it was, hey, some ugly, low-scoring games, close games. The quarterback play was something less to be desired, if you will. The over right now sitting at 8.5 plus 125, under 8.5 minus 150. Again, I just think because of the makeup of the division, I'm not comfortable with the Steelers winning more than 8 games. And the other bugaboo is who's going to be the starting quarterback come week 1?
It's going to be it's your boy, Russell Wilson. And, if you look statistically, 26 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, but very tentative, not the same guy that he was in Seattle. And they're bringing him in, trying to get lightning about. It's only a 1-year contract. He still owed $39 million from the Denver Broncos. So they'd say, why not bring him over now? Justin Fields is coming as well.
Yep.
Spectacular talent, can run around, make plays, but obviously there's inconsistencies in his game. So, when you talk about the Steelers, though, and 8 wins, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. So I
But
would probably say
go ahead, finish your
I'd
point.
go over. I'd probably go over that. No.
Okay, here's my rationale for going under that because at some point in the season when they're 2-4 and Russell Wilson's struggling, what's going to be the conversation? Go to
Yeah,
Justin Fields, right?
maybe, but you have to look at what's around him, and they're another team. They're trying to fix their offensive line to become that physical team that they used to be in the past, and I think you're going to see a lot more Najee Harris, Jalen Warren in the backfield as well had a very good season last year, and anything's got to be up for Kenny Pickett. He was playing so terrible for them, and they were able to win games in spite of him. So I still think the Steelers are going to be able to get it done. But Q, when I look at their schedule, extremely tough too.
But that's
Another
my whole
one,
point, right? So if they're
yeah,
2-4, Tomlin's not gonna, you've got low risk, high reward with the signing of Russell Wilson. So my justification is the under is that when they're 2-4 and he's going by the premise and the guys that he's struggling, then you're going to turn attention to who? Justin Fields, and you're going to see if you have something in this kid to work going forward. So you might have some throwaway games here and there. I mean, I'm sure you're pulling up their schedule, and I'm sure you're looking at that first 4 or 5 weeks of the schedule where we might sit there and say winnable games: Atlanta, Denver, Chargers, Indianapolis, Dallas, Vegas, the Jets, the Giants, then a bye. So what are we looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, your best case scenario is 4-4, but I don't see that. I see
and it's
2 and
going to be
6.
tough.
I see 3 and 5. I see by the bye week Russell Wilson being benched, and it's only friggin' May. So
Yeah, if he's not playing well, Tomlin will not hesitate to take him out. And Mike Tomlin, that's who I'm really, when I talk about that bet, I think I got to put my cards on, Mike Tomlin, a guy who's always won at least 9 games. And the thing is with them, as you were saying, 3 of their first 4 games are on the road, and it's really going to be like, okay, who is this team at that point? Week 5, they have Dallas on Sunday Night Football.
yep.
They play the Jets. Week 7, Sunday Night Football, the Giants. Week 8, Monday Night Football. They get their bye. Um, their hated rival, Baltimore, week 11. Then they're on Thursday night at Cleveland, then at Cincinnati, then Cleveland again. So that's going to be an interesting swing there. So one of those teams is either going to jump out of there 2-0 or 0-2, I think, between those two teams and that little stretch there between against Cleveland. And then at Philadelphia, week 15, another tough game. Right behind it at Baltimore, Kansas City on Christmas, and then they finish with Cincinnati. So I do agree with you that it is a tough schedule that they may not make it through, but I'm going to believe in Mike Tomlin. I think he'll get it done, but
Easily
it's going to be
influenced.
fun to watch this quarterback carousel and see how this spins. Now, already they're talking about what I want to get your take. Justin Fields, they're talking about him returning kicks. Are, are they insane? You're going to be a daredevil back there, and he's never done it in his career.
I think Joe Theismann returned punts when he started his career, if memory serves me.
Yeah. So they're trying to make him another slash and all that, but your quarterbacks, these guys, they've been a quarterback ever since they were a little kid,
Yeah,
and
that's all they
they,
know.
yeah, and especially on special teams this year, I think there's going to be a lot more excitement, and you got these guys running down like Larry Izzo back in the
Yeah,
day, and Steve Tasker, those
right.
guys trying to take your head off. Do
Yeah.
you really want your backup quarterback doing that?
No, I would think not. All right, 2-minute warning here as we wrap it up. So let's run through this right now. So Baltimore over 11.5 wins, you say?
I'll go under. I say about 11 wins for them.
I agree. Cincinnati over or under 10.5.
I will go under. They're probably going to come in like right around 10 wins, I think.
Cleveland, it could be a trap here, but they were 11-6, over under 8.5.
I'm going to go under that number, and I think they go at lightning at bottom. I just don't think they're the same team as last year.
And then Pittsburgh 8.5. You like them going over.
I do like them going over, and
Wow.
early on, and I was telling my son, I said, I think the Steelers may win the division this year. And he
I was
said, I'm
about to
crazy.
just ask you that. A
He,
lot of
he thinks
10-7,
I'm
9-8.
crazy.
Wow.
But we got to wait and see. But I think they go over that 8.5. But as we move into training camp, we'll get a better picture of these teams. But right now, on paper, looking at these schedules, they all have tough journeys ahead of them. But as I said, the Steelers, I just think Tom's going to figure out a way to get it done.
BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. Host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. 1029 The Game, part of the Broad Street South Network. Give him a follow on X at Lloyd Vance as well. And don't forget in the show notes, BYP brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Fresh roasted coffee. We appreciate everyone engaging us, the subs, the likes, the comments, the shares. Keep it rolling. You can catch us as well on 1029 The Game, also part of Leon Media Network, LMN, down there in Miami, Florida. All right, AFC East will be the division that we will dive into on the next edition of Back Your Play with Q. Lloyd, I always appreciate a couple moments, pal. Thank you.
Q.